Support for WUWM podcasts comes from University School of Milwaukee, fulfilling a values-based mission of developing learners, fostering leaders, and preparing citizens for pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. More information at usm.org/mission.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Joy Powers. Today, we'll look at concerns over the Milwaukee Police Department potentially expanding its use of facial recognition technology. Then, Wisconsin hemp businesses are speaking out against an upcoming federal ban and state bill restricting hemp products.
If the federal ban were to stand, it would essentially outlaw all of the products that we currently sell in our neighborhood shop that help people sleep, that help people relieve pain, and offer an alternative to alcohol.
Plus, we'll speak with a local lawyer and online influencer about her platform.
The people here need affordable housing for renting and for buying, but there's no investment on a larger scale into those things, so that's what I would like to see.
All of that is coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Joy Powers, and thank you so much for joining us. Despite community pushback, the Milwaukee Police Department has been considering expanding its use of facial recognition technology. Milwaukee's Equal Rights Commission and the majority of Milwaukee's Common Council have come out in opposition to expanding the use of facial recognition, citing concerns over misidentification. Others, like Emilio De Torre from the Milwaukee Turners, have voiced concerns over how data collected from facial recognition technology could be weaponized against the community, especially as the Trump administration continues its crusade against undocumented people. De Torre is also a member of WUWM's advisory board. He recently wrote an op-ed for the Shepherd Express, arguing that facial recognition data is bound to end up in the hands of federal authorities. He joins me now to talk about this issue. Emilio, thank you so much for joining us here on Lake Effect.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
When we're talking about facial recognition technology, I think it might surprise people to learn that this is something the Milwaukee Police Department is just talking about now, but this is also something they've already been engaging with in some ways. What are the kinds of information gathering that they're currently doing in this field?
Sure. That's a great question. And I think the exposure that the Milwaukee Police Department has been using facial recognition technology has kind of leaked out into the public the way the exposure of their use of other technologies has leaked out to the public. We don't know. We're not quite certain how long they've been using it because they haven't really told the public, regardless of folks at the Equal Rights Commission or the Fire and Police Commission or the Common Council asking for this information or them pledging transparency and saying that they valued public input. They really haven't been forthcoming. We just know that they've been using facial recognition technology of one sort or another for at least a couple of years. Where that goes, who has access to it, what type of biometric data they're collecting from our faces now, or what they're hoping to collect in the future, or where they're going to trade it or sell it. It's all a big gray mystery. And I think that kind of erodes the trust of Milwaukeeans. Joy, this happened a few years ago when Flynn was still chief, when they had used the stingrays and it was the BBC. It was an international embarrassment for Milwaukee that when the BBC broke this case that the police department were tracking our cell phones, so potentially our phone calls, all of our text messages, and that could create a little dragnet of a mile and a half radius. There's an awful lot of people in Milwaukee in a mile radius, and that they had used that 500 times before they were honest about it. And for them to then do this with facial recognition technology and to smugly, in a Fire and Police Commission presentation, say that they were offering to trade 2.5 million faces of Milwaukeeans to this company to use in their algorithms to, making a map library of our faces. That's a terrible thing.
Yeah. Now it seems like there is some public discussion of the kinds of facial recognition technologies they're hoping to use, are currently using. What have we been hearing from them about what they hope to do and what they're planning to do, I guess?
Sure. And some of that's a little opaque. If you recall, the Common Council, at least 11 of the 15 Common Council members had written a letter to Chief Norman saying, please don't use this technology. It's insidious. It's powerful. It's unclear how you're going to use this. There's been nothing forthcoming from the police department about how you have been using this without telling us for a couple of years, let alone how you project using this. It had come to light that they were hoping to have a contract with a company called Biometrica. And you find a lot with these end-user license agreements that the Milwaukee Police Department and other police departments get involved with, that these private companies now have access to data that is gleaned from us, Milwaukee residents, paid for with our tax dollars, and then commodified and sold to international weapons companies, private data machines, companies that have demonstrably used faulty racist algorithms which misidentify Black and Asian and non-binary folks on the regular. And now our police department, in opposition to the public expressions we saw at multiple public meetings, in opposition to the desires of the Common Council, still want to go forward and use this. I'm not sure how they will use it in the future because they haven't really told us how they've used it for the past couple of years. And so I don't want to have conjecture based on something that I feel has been intentionally hidden from us. What I do know is that because of the fusion centers and because of the recent erosion between the federal government and our local law enforcement, that any data from anything, the flock cameras, automated license plate readers, red light cameras, facial recognition technology, anything that is recorded and aggregated by a police department will be accessed by ICE and the federal government and used against folks in the way that we currently see ICE moving against folks now. And I think that that is an abomination.
Yeah, you wrote an article about this, and one of the things you point to as being the real argument against collecting this data, but more so the idea that we could somehow keep this data away from the federal government, from ICE, from CBP, is the track record, what's been happening right now. You mentioned the Wisconsin fusion centers. Can you tell us about these?
Sure. So not too far from here, right? Near Marquette and MATC is a big building, and it houses something called STAC. And STAC is the Southeast Wisconsin Fusion Center. That is a building where federal and state and local and county, local meaning city and county law enforcement, have an aggregated network of all sorts of information, intel, technology, and resources. Normally, there are laws and due process that folks follow to share information. If I want to do a wiretap on Joy Powers, I have to show to a judge why I need this thing. The judge has to review that and say, okay, yes, this seems plausible. Go forward and get this. And so there are firewalls. The Milwaukee Police Department has its own fusion center in the same building. What we've seen of late is that there are multiple ways for law enforcement to get around the safeties and the protections that we as citizens and we as residents in this country and the city should enjoy. One of them is kind of like the do me a favor fellow law enforcement guy network. And what happened recently in San Francisco, showing how officers in Georgia, in Michigan, in all of these other states were able to access the San Francisco Police Department's flock cameras 1,600,000 times by other states' police departments. So that's like, hey, fellow officer, can you do me a favor and run this? And it turns out that a lot of those 1,600,000 times that local police department's flock cameras were accessed were done on behalf of ICE. So now other states can, through this informal channel, be able to access the things that the Milwaukee Police Department or STAC, the Southeast Wisconsin Fusion Center, may have, regardless of what they say. The other way is how ICE is already demonstrably accessing these things. You know, with the changes in how States are moving. For example, an insidious example that occurred in Texas where they used some 80,000 cameras to track a woman's movements because they believed she was going to leave the state for an abortion. If that doesn't terrify people that they can track you this way, then perhaps another article out of just this week's newspapers, I was reading this morning, how the Greenfield Chief of Police, Jay Johnson, was using his own police department's surveillance cameras to spy on his soon-to-be ex-wife because he had concerns over who she was dating. That is the chief of police of the Greenfield Police Department. This is what's being alleged, and the mayor and council people and other officers advised him against this. We're putting incredibly powerful technology which can follow folks anywhere, makes maps of you, and synthesize it in one room now in these fusion centers. At the fusion centers, there's things called Fusus and other technologies, some owned by the government, some third-party softwares, which are currently monitoring all of your social media, your Facebook, your TikTok, your Instagram, YouTube, your streaming platforms. This broadcast now, once it gets uploaded, are being examined for vocabulary, for photos, analyzing different things. This isn't an episode of Black Mirror. This is real, and all of your listeners can look these things up, and hopefully this will inspire them to look that up, because this is all aggregated in these fusion centers, and the one closest to us, just a mile away from us, and it allows folks to access this very quickly. And whether they're accessing it because the federal government can just say that they can access it and push through, whether they're accessing it because they're looking at it as some sort of collegial favor to a fellow officer, or whether they're accessing it because it's a bad actor using these powerful resources for their own nefarious reasons, doesn't really matter. The fact is that since these tools exist, it is possible for them to be exploited by all of these folks. And I believe very much that this is a nonpartisan issue. I believe that Democrats and Republicans should care deeply that we are giving away so much of our privacy to organizations that are not only no longer seem to be within the confines of the law, but are also intentionally masking and hiding themselves. So even when they are in public, we cannot identify who they are. And to give an organization that has seemingly no accountability all of this power is a gross mistake.
I was talking to someone recently about writing, specifically his concerns about previous things he's written and how it might be perceived by the federal government today. And it seems like one of the big concerns here, especially with the aggregation of all of this kind of information on people, is that you might not be doing anything in particular, but if you're looking for red flags, you can create red flags. Mm-hmm. Is there any feasible way to safeguard this information once it is collected?
I don't see that any longer. It's like the nuclear detente, and that's a loser's game. I see our only path forward as Milwaukeeans is to, like many other cities before us, San Francisco, both Portland's, Madison, prevent the use of this weaponized technology in our city. We do not need this. It has not been shown to deter crime. They will find one example and bandy it about and say, hey, look, it helped us find this person half an hour sooner or an hour sooner. That's not a good enough reason, because the harm greatly outweighs any perceived, any conjectured benefit, and I haven't seen that benefit demonstrably proven. I think to create this tool and to think that the federal government can't and won't touch it is absurdly naive. I might say that having a handgun is a good safety precaution for my home, and it may be. But to leave that handgun on a desk with people I don't trust, where a child or someone else can access it, is foolish. And I'm using that analogy for facial recognition technology. I do not believe the city should use this. There are many other alternatives that will encourage safety and promote safety and promote equity. It is demonstrably racist and flawed in how the algorithms work. That is proven. And for us to now create these databases and maps of Milwaukee residents, which will be a low-hanging fruit and plucked off by the federal government, no matter what the police say, is foolishness on our part as a city.
One of the biggest concerns that I think you mentioned is, yes, about our community, but also about community trust. We want our communities to have good relationships with the police. It's good when people trust one another, so when something bad is happening, they feel as though there's someone to help them.
Absolutely.
What is the impact this is having and could have on community trust?
That's really poignant, because I think when our community was first shaken by the prospect of immigration raids, ripping Milwaukee families apart, and unchecked, not strategic federal encroachments into our communities, our city was good in saying that we were supporting Milwaukeeans. If I feel as an immigrant that I can't come to the police to report a crime I've seen, or say I know who stole my neighbor's car, or smile and wave and be an active, productive member of my community, then our city's resilience is diminished. And the chief of police and the sheriff did a good job early on saying that they were here for the residents of Milwaukee. To use all of a sudden a tool like facial recognition technology, which ICE will access, even now that people know that ICE is accessing the license plate readers and flock cameras, has sent an incredible chilling message into the community. To your point of trust, you look at it as a bank, and every time an action removes a coin of trust from that piggy bank, the police or the sheriff's department has to put it back. They came out strong when this crisis first hit, and Milwaukee residents were grateful to them for it. When everybody discovered that ICE could access license plate readers and flock cameras no matter what, that trust diminished. And you see it happening in other cities, and whether or not it's been publicized as having happened here yet doesn't matter, because nobody's naive enough to believe that only Milwaukee is magically protected. To add this new technology of facial recognition algorithms and surveillance into what we already have is going to really, really erode trust between immigrant population and folks who are already demonstrably on the short end of the stick of FRT, like Black and Asian folks.
Emilio De Torre is the executive director of the Milwaukee Turners and a member of WUWM's advisory board. We reached out to the Milwaukee Police Department for comment, but did not hear back by our deadline. Now, let's learn a bit about how facial recognition technology actually works, and the implications when government entities like the Milwaukee Police Department partner with private companies that offer this technology. Dr. Alan Rubel is the director of UW-Madison's Information School, where he teaches classes on tech ethics and policy. He joins WUWM digital producer Graham Thomas to discuss how facial recognition technology works and how it can be used.
Starting with the basics of this tech that we're talking about, what is facial recognition technology, and what exactly do these FRT licenses allow police to do?
Facial recognition technology allows any user of it to take a data set of known faces, of mapped facial features, and plug in new data, that is a new picture of a person, and check it against that database in order to try to determine the identity of that person. As for the licenses, typically they involve some kind of subscription service where a police department, a sheriff's department, another agency, or a private entity can access a private corporation's facial recognition technology and the database that they have in order to identify people. And you have this, set of mugshots that are stored, and then they can be added to the database that the commercial provider has, both to train its models on and to expand the reach of the technology that they have.
what sorts of civil rights concerns are raised by the Milwaukee Police Department and the sheriff's office potentially acquiring this technology?
Yeah, so this is where I think it gets extremely complicated and thorny, and involves a lot of stuff that we don't yet know. So, in the US, we have a number of privacy protections. The Fourth Amendment protects you and I and anybody else against unreasonable searches and seizures. There are Fifth Amendment protections against self-incrimination. The First Amendment protects for your expressive activities. 14th Amendment has the equal protection clause that tries to ensure that we are treated equitably and fairly. And anytime there is a surveillance technology, that could be a technology like binoculars or a drug sniffing dog or anything like that, you have a way in which government actors, in this case, private actors can do it as well, but here we're talking about police departments, government actors, encroaching upon individual privacy, right? Information collection by the government just is a way in which your privacy is diminished with respect to government actors. That can be justifiable. The government collects lots of information for very good purposes, to collect taxes, to protect property, to run all kinds of government systems. However, we also know that being on the sharp end of police action, being investigated for a crime, either major crime or minor crime, it creates the possibility of mistreatment, is itself an imposition on individuals, and can be used in ways that harm individuals, that harm civil society. I can give a couple of examples, but I just want to make clear the idea is that anytime you've got a surveillance technology, there's this possibility of harms to individual interests and individual rights, as well as harms to community interests and rights. So that's sort of the premise here. Anytime you've got anything like that, there's this potential. Now, how might this work? Well, if the city of Milwaukee or any government actor is trying to justify surveillance technology, they're going to talk about finding people who have committed violent crimes. So governments make the case based on something we agree is important in enforcing criminal law against violent crimes and other sorts of major infractions. However, investigations into crimes pick up lots of people. They pick up witnesses to crime. They pick up people who are nearby the crime. They pick up people who look like a person who might have committed a crime. They can be used in ways that are not about enforcing criminal law in these kind of major cases. They can be used to determine who was at a political rally or who appeared in a place seemingly in support of something that is disfavored, right? And we've seen cases fairly recently where government actors will take political activity to retaliate against institutions, some cases universities, we've seen law firms, or individuals. Sometimes, say, revoking visas of people who have been engaged in expressive activities. And the ability to use these surveillance technologies and treat people in bad ways, with the sort of vast power of the government, increases as our surveillance capabilities increase also. Now, the counter argument here is every technology can be abused, and we can't say that a technology should be forbidden because there are these abusive cases that exist. However, it is important, I think, when you adopt these technologies, not just to take a government agency at their word, that they're going to use it only for that really important edge case, enforcing the law against violent criminals, but also that we create actual constraints on use in these other kinds of cases. And, I think that's what often gets lost is, you don't want to just say that no technology is justifiable because it can be abused. You also don't want to say that just because it can be used for good, we ought to have carte blanche to use it. We want to be careful about honing the tool to do the job and not just allow it to be a blunt instrument or be adopted in cases that are not that really important.
I'm wondering if you could speak to how racial profiling plays into this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of possibilities. One is that a number of researchers have demonstrated that biometric technologies, in particular facial recognition technologies, do worse in identifying people with darker skin tones. That is, they'll have more false positives. And that makes it more likely that a non-white person is going to be identified as someone of interest, purely based on the way the technology has been trained. Moreover, we, all over the US, have had a history of more people of color being caught up in the criminal justice system. If you're a Black person in Milwaukee, for example, you're much more likely than a white person in Milwaukee to have a mugshot against which to compare this data. There's also the possibility that use of any surveillance technique can be directed at people based on discretion of police. So, for example, you might train a speed gun on traffic in particular neighborhoods. And though the speed gun is very good at being neutral about, who's actually in a car, the way it's deployed could also be done in a way that is unfair. And what that means is, we're dependent upon police departments to deploy things fairly, right? And that's certainly not always the case in the United States.
Does it look like this trade will jeopardize the rights or privacy of convicts, or the rights of people who maybe get arrested but don't get convicted?
I think it's absolutely crucial to recognize that having a mugshot doesn't entail that a person has committed a crime at all, right? It means a person has been arrested, booked for a crime. So anybody can potentially get picked up, right? So the database is going to contain a lot more people than just people convicted of crimes. That said, it's of course true that one doesn't lose all rights once one's been convicted of a crime. Many crimes are pretty minimal. Even crimes that are more substantial doesn't mean that you have to provide your information for a biometric company to make software off of your image. You may not have a right to have privacy in your mugshot. Other people may be able to view it, but that's a different matter than using state resources to underwrite the development of this technology. That said, it's not even the people who are in mugshots who are going to be affected by the technology. This is facial recognition technology. It is not technology to find people who have had mugshots taken of them. The photos could come from anywhere, right? So just because you've got a bunch of mugshot photos that are either trained on or serve as an important data set to compare pictures taken out in public are, you could start with a Facebook photo or a high school graduation photo or anything that appears online anywhere. And if you can attach an identity to that, you can use the SAW and feed it into the system. You can use that to identify people on the street. There's sort of three levels here. Yeah, there's a bunch of people who probably have a diminished claim to privacy based on having been convicted for certain kinds of crimes. But that's a tiny percentage of the people who will be affected by this. It's not everybody who's had a mugshot of them. And this technology is not, a mugshot matching app. It's facial recognition. Mugshots are just part of the picture.
Dr. Alan Rubel is the director of UW-Madison's Information School. He spoke with WUWM's Graham Thomas in August. In about 10 minutes, we'll meet a local lawyer and online influencer who is featured in our latest episode of Milwaukee Based, a podcast all about Milwaukee's internet culture. But first, we'll speak with the local hemp business owner about the impact the recent federal ban on most hemp-derived products could have on their business and customers. That's coming up on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. Hemp businesses in Wisconsin are advocating for their livelihoods. President Donald Trump signed legislation earlier this month, ending the government shutdown. But as part of that bill, there's a provision that would ban intoxicating products derived from hemp. The ban would take effect toward the end of 2026. Marijuana is not legal in Wisconsin, but thanks to the 2018 Farm Bill, consumers have access to hemp-derived products such as CBD and THC-infused foods and drinks. Those products have become more popular, but they aren't strictly regulated in Wisconsin. State lawmakers have also considered regulating hemp in ways that are similar to how alcohol is regulated. That legislation was supported by the Tavern League, a lobbying group for businesses that sell alcohol. One local business that sells hemp products is Kelly's Greens in Wauwatosa. WUWM's Eric Von Fellow Maria Peralta Ariano spoke with the store's owner, Aaron Kelly, to learn what the federal changes and proposed state regulations would mean for her business.
An important distinction for our listeners who may be just wondering more about who you are and what this business is. What do you make? What do you sell? Just pretty much what is your main source of income for the business?
Sure. At Kelly's Greens, we specialize in craft cannabis products that are made right here in Wisconsin by me or a maker that I stand behind. Everything is third-party tested. It has a full certificate of analysis, which is a full lab report to ensure that our products are made safely. And essentially what we sell here are cannabis-infused edibles, smokables, and beverages made right here in Wisconsin, and they're infused with cannabis. So when you think about the products that are being sold in every other legal state around us, they're selling THC from the marijuana plant. And right here in our shop, we're selling THC from the hemp plant, which is 100% the same molecule for molecule as the THC that exists in the marijuana plant. So the bulk of our products that we sell are infused with CBD, which is anti-inflammatory and anti-anxiety, no euphoric effect, as well as the hemp-derived THC, which is exactly the same as what's being sold around us. Some people like to say that Wisconsin is hotboxed with every legal state around us because Wisconsin is relying on hemp-based products, and we haven't been able to get to that legal marijuana yet.
And for people who may not be understanding just generally of cannabis, of the differences, why is it important to make the distinction between hemp and the intoxicating cannabis that people may be thinking about when we're talking about this?
So there's lots of different reasons why to make the distinction between hemp and marijuana. First off, a lot of products that are being sold that are derived from hemp are CBD. And CBD is a product that, yes, it does have a trace amount of THC in it that makes it effective, but it is not a euphoric-based product. When you think about CBD, it treats PTSD in vets. It treats anxiety and inflammation. It treats small children that are having issues with seizures. And so we would lose not only the euphoric medicine that people have come to rely on to relax and feel good as an alternative, but we would also lose all medicine that we know it's proven medicine that works. This is a plant that's been used for thousands of years by billions of people. You know, this is a plant that this isn't new. This isn't going away.
So can you just describe what the state regulation proposal was and how pretty much you got involved in the testimony, and then how is the impact different from the federal ban that was imposed?
So when we learned about Assembly Bill 606, which is essentially a three-tier distribution bill that is modeled off for a tavern league approach of how to distribute alcohol here in the state of Wisconsin. And the reason why I got involved is because I don't believe that big alcohol should be running cannabis in this state or any state. Big alcohol has, the times have changed, right? When I was a kid, I drank an incredible amount of alcohol. I had bad behavior, and now we know better. And so people are looking for an alternative to alcohol, and we want it regulated by cannabis experts, not big alcohol that has opposed the cannabis industry and wants to put their paws on it to profit, not to promote cannabis in the state of Wisconsin or across this country.
What are your feelings, I guess? You told me a little bit when you brought in the alcohol industry. What is their interest in this? Where do you see their involvement coming?
I think that big alcohol and pharma are trying to prohibit hemp-based products to personally profit themselves. This has nothing to do with protecting kids or safely regulating products. These products have been safely sold since 2018 in this country. Most reputable businesses are implementing the common sense regulations that we're asking for. But the bottom line is this is a gross overstep of power fueled by greed that the alcohol wants to run hemp-based beverages because people are choosing less alcohol and their profits are getting hit.
And then what will the federal ban mean for not only you and your business, but also your employees and the community that you're serving?
So if the federal ban were to stand, it would essentially outlaw all of the products that we currently sell in our neighborhood shop that help people sleep, that help people relieve pain, and offer an alternative to alcohol. Continuing to sell hemp-based products after the ban would be considered a crime.
When reading these bills, there are some things where people would, at face value, agree with, obviously restricting access to people under 21. Where do you agree and where do you differ with these bills? What were some changes that you would make?
And when I'm looking at all of these bills, I certainly agree with common sense regulation, serving euphoric products to people 21 and up, third-party testing products, and these are things that are already happening in our shop right now. I support all of that. I support reasonable taxation. I believe that instead of encouraging people from Wisconsin to go outside of the state, we should be selling these products here and not land like Illinois, where the cannabis products are so entirely expensive. Reasonable taxation that would allow for things like schools and roads improving in Wisconsin would benefit everybody.
What's the road for you guys here? Do you guys have a game plan? What are you just generally thinking for, say, the year ahead?
All right, so what's next for us here in the state of Wisconsin is that we need a viable hemp plan that's going to protect businesses like us and consumers that want to continue buying these products, as well as protecting the farmers that grow this product right here. So we are working with our representatives to have a viable hemp plan that essentially would allow us to continue to do business after the federal ban would go into place, because state trumps Fed.
Where do you see the future of cannabis in the state? Do you think that it's something that we can make legal, decriminalize, and regulate? Or are we saying goodbye pretty much for good? Just what do you think about the ability to access it in the future?
I definitely think these products are not going away. They are far too popular and they are far too helpful. There are so many people that want these products to stay. And we are encouraged by the number of customers that are coming to our shop and showing overwhelming support and asking how they can help to keep these products. I do believe the good guy wins in the end, and we'll keep fighting to keep hemp-derived products sold right here in Wisconsin.
Erin Kelly is the owner of Kelly's Greens. She spoke with WUWM's Eric Vaughn fellow Maria Peralta Ariano. Coming up, we'll meet Milwaukee lawyer and influencer Soph in Law to learn how she went viral and how she uses her platform. That's next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. If you're a TikTok or Instagram user, you may have seen videos posted by Soph in Law. She's a lawyer and content creator who got her start by sharing her law school journey online. Now she posts a wide variety of lifestyle content, from food and book reviews to housing justice advocacy. She joins WUWM's Graham Thomas and Samia Saeed on Episode 2 of Milwaukee Based, our podcast on local internet culture.
Well, lawyer, content creator, advocate, matcha drinker, Soph in Law, welcome to Milwaukee Based.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks for coming in. Wondering if you could tell us a bit about your journey from that podcast about navigating law school to kind of making TikToks and becoming one of Milwaukee's biggest influencers.
Yeah, absolutely. So ironically, my sister had begged me for 3 years to get a TikTok, and I refused, and I refused, and I refused. And then when I was applying to law schools, I was watching so many YouTube videos about people in law school, lawyers, and I just was not finding anybody that I related to. Like, I felt like there were these two extremes. People were crying every single day, hated law school, freaking out all the time, or they just didn't care and it was really easy. And I said, neither of those are going to be my experience. I already know I'm a stressful person, but I just don't think I'm going to be crying every single day. So I decided I would make a TikTok right before I started law school. I made it a month before I started law school and started posting pretty much every day religiously. I actually didn't take a day off from posting for like a year and a half into having a TikTok. I posted every single day, and I just made it my video journal. Made a lot of mutuals, connected with Brianne, who her username is Brianne in Law. So that's how we connected. And then we started our podcast because we thought some of the advice that was getting out there on TikTok was just unreasonable and didn't fit like the average student. A lot of the advice was geared towards people who came from pretty privileged backgrounds, and neither of that was our experience. So that's how that started with the podcast. And then actually 2 years into my TikTok career is when I started talking about Milwaukee. So only half the time I've been on TikTok, I've been talking about Milwaukee.
Awesome. So you've gained this level of fame now. Do you feel it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everywhere I go in public, I get recognized or stopped. It really hit me this past summer because someone asked for a photo together. And I was like, what? Why do you want a picture with me? But it's happened more times since then. But it's really sweet. It's always really cool, local people. So it's never anything where I'm like, no, get away. It's always just been really great, cool, interesting people. So it's been good.
Awesome. Love that.
So a lot of your content has focused on kind of demystifying the legal field. Mm-hmm. And so rewinding a little bit, how did you decide to go into law in the first place?
Yeah, long journey. In undergrad, actually since I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go to medical school. I wanted to do Doctors Without Borders. I was like, I'm going to learn a bunch of languages. I'm going to go a bunch of places and help a bunch of people. Going through undergrad, though, I just hated what I was doing. I didn't like my biology major. It was super ecology based. I didn't enjoy that. So I ended up dropping my bio major, switching to chemistry, and then I also had a Spanish major. And during my senior year, there was actually a few racist incidents on campus. I got really involved in planning the protest, dealing with sort of the paperwork, making sure everyone was safe on campus, organizing it, writing the statement to the dean, that kind of stuff, statement to the chancellor. And during that time, we did, all these trainings to keep everyone who was participating safe, trainings on how to deal with the police as students on a public campus, things like that. And it got me really interested in policy. So I was like, okay, I need to do something else. I cannot go to medical school. This is not the life for me. And I had already taken the MCAT and was like preparing to apply to medical school. And I said, nope, this isn't it. So I switched actually my senior year and said, at least I'll learn about the law and I'll go into policy or not, and I'll be a practicing attorney or not, but I'll go and at least learn. And now I am a practicing attorney. So I did go that route. I didn't go the policy route, but I'm still very interested in it for sure.
What are some of people's biggest misconceptions about going to law school, becoming a lawyer?
That everyone's a square, that everyone's super boring, or a liar, or a swindler, or a scammer. There's a big scammer reputation in the law, which definitely there are some scammers. There's for sure some scammers. But in general, the majority of the population that goes to law school is very average, normal people. And I think when you think of law school, you think of all the really prestigious institutions. You're like, you got to go to Harvard, you got to go to Northwestern, you got to go to Yale or whatever. And I know people who go to all of those law schools or have gone to all of those law schools. Very normal, regular people. There are definitely some. There's always going to be some cuckoos at every law school, but for the most part, it's the most regular people. Like, it's just someone who's interested in being a lawyer, helping people, or just having a steady job. Like, it's a fairly secure job, so.
In a previous interview, you've mentioned the pro bono work that you've done, and you've mentioned, like, specifically non-English speaking clients that you've worked with. So what attracted you to that kind of work, and, like, what capacity were you helping those clients in?
Honestly, going back to when I was 8 and I said, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to learn a bunch of languages, I'm going to do Doctors Without Borders. I grew up speaking French. My dad's from Morocco, and that was my parents' common language. So I grew up speaking French and English. So Spanish was just kind of the easiest one to learn. And also that's the only one that my school offered. So I took Spanish all 4 years of high school. And then when I went off to college, I knew that I wanted to major in Spanish and major in something else. So that's what I did. I studied abroad in Spain, and then I also taught English in Mexico. And then when I started law school, I knew for sure that I wanted to do any type of volunteer work that I could. And the main one in law school is pro bono. Marquette has a really strong pro bono volunteer system. A lot of alums still participate. It's ran by alums and students. So during law school, I started my second semester of my first year, and I worked the same exact clinic every single week, which is the United Community Center on the south side. So probably half of the population that comes in for legal assistance speak Spanish and only speak Spanish. So when I started volunteering there, they put me in the front right away. Like, I ran the front table, I checked everyone in, I helped them fill out forms, translated for them, and then I would get pulled back and I would translate for the students and attorneys. And then now as an attorney, I go and I just, obviously I interpret for myself, I translate for myself and help people in English and Spanish. So
your clients also include, like, locals impacted by the housing crisis. What is the support that you provide for them?
Yeah, so actually during law school, I did do a housing internship with Eviction Free MKE through Legal Action. So I did specifically spend a semester doing that, and essentially they represent clients on a pro bono basis because it's county funding and outside funding for the Eviction Free MK program. So the attorneys from Legal Action, they have a sort of clinic at the courthouse. So you can come in to Suite 401. That's where they do eviction court. You go in there, they do consults in person, and then they basically assign you an attorney to go into court with you day of. So they do the assistance for that. I didn't actually do that as a student when I was interning, but I helped do sort of like background research. I would be there in person, help with intake, stuff like that.
So overall, kind of what have those like pro bono experiences kind of taught you about the Milwaukee housing crisis?
Yeah, well, it's bad. First off, I learned about it firsthand because of pro bono, and then I kind of sought more information after that. So your first year of law school, you take what are called doctrinals, and those are sort of the set courses that every single first year law student takes. And most schools, I think literally only Yale doesn't require it. Most schools take property law their very first year or at some point during law school. And I was really fortunate, and I had Professor Papke, who was actually from Milwaukee, grew up in Milwaukee, left for school, came back, and is also very passionate about Milwaukee. So he taught property law from a very Milwaukee based, like very focused perspective on what is happening in Milwaukee or case studies from Milwaukee for what we were learning. So that kind of got me enmeshed in it at the same time as I was doing pro bono. And I read both of Matthew Desmond's books, Evicted, which is about Milwaukee. It's a case study about the eviction crisis here. And then doing that internship, my second year of law school, was just heavily eviction work focused. It's bad. It's mostly Black single mothers who are evicted here in Milwaukee, but the Eviction Free MK program has literally saved the county like millions of dollars just by being around and helping people. It saved the county filing fees. Like, it's done a lot. It's done a lot.
Are there any like major like government reforms that you'd love to see to address the housing crisis?
Honestly, not even just for Milwaukee, but this would affect Milwaukee a lot, is having more people who would accept Section 8 vouchers that are not like properties. That would be number one. And actually today I was just complaining about this. There's another quote unquote luxury building going up, like South Shore area or something like that. And if you look at the downtown, there are certain apartment buildings, and I won't name names, I think we can all literally see them. They're not even close to their occupancy because they're trying to reach a market of individuals that don't exist in Milwaukee. Like, the people here need affordable housing for renting and for buying, but there's no investment on a larger scale into those things. So that's what I would like to see. More investment countywide into properties. There are some nonprofits who are, taking penny lots and building affordable homes and being able to sell those homes back to families who are from those neighborhoods and stuff like that. But I would like to see more of that at honestly, a federal level. Who cares about investing in the cities and growing the affordable properties?
That was Soph In Law, a local lawyer and lifestyle influencer. She joined WUWM's Graham Thomas and Samia Saeed for episode 2 of our Internet Culture podcast, Milwaukee Based. You can check out their full conversation on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And that wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Joy Powers. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll look at the history of redlining in Milwaukee and how it still impacts the housing market today in our series, Keys to Home Ownership. Thanks so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.